It was 8:23 p.m. when Christine Murray heard her doorbell ring at her house in a quiet cul-de-sac in Boise, Idaho. She wasn't expecting anyone, had ordered no deliveries, and her neighbors typically texted before stopping by. She walked to the front door and looked through the peephole to see a man standing on her porch, someone she didn't recognize, middle-aged, wearing casual clothes, holding a piece of paper. Christine opened the door but kept the screen door latched between them. "Can I help you?" she asked, friendly but cautious. The man smiled, held up the paper. "Hey, sorry to bother you. I'm looking for 4487 Maple Grove Drive, and I think I've got the wrong house. This is 4478, right?" Christine glanced at the number on her mailbox, visible from where they stood. It clearly said 4478, and Maple Grove Drive was the next street over. Easy mistake to make in a subdivision where all the streets had similar names. "Yeah, you're on Aspen Drive. Maple Grove is one street north," Christine said, pointing in the general direction. "Thanks so much," the man said, still smiling, still standing on her porch, not leaving. And Christine felt the first prickle of unease. Normal people would apologize, turn around, get back in their car. This man was just standing there, and now that Christine looked more carefully, she couldn't see a vehicle in her driveway or parked on the street nearby, which was strange if he'd driven here looking for an address. "Have a good night," Christine said, starting to close the door, a polite signal that the conversation was over. "Wait, actually, can I use your bathroom real quick? I've been driving around for a while and I really need to go." The request sent alarm bells screaming through Christine's mind. This was a classic social engineering tactic she'd read about, getting someone to open their door by creating a sense of obligation or emergency. "There's a gas station 2 blocks down on State Street," Christine said, keeping her voice neutral, not hostile, but firm. "You'll have to use theirs." The man's smile disappeared, replaced by something colder, calculating. "Come on, it'll just take a minute. I'm not going to rob you or anything." And the fact that he'd volunteered that assurance, that he'd explicitly raised the possibility of robbery when Christine hadn't suggested it, told her everything she needed to know. "No, I'm sorry, I can't help you," Christine said, and she closed the door and locked it, her heart pounding. She stood in her entryway listening, expecting to hear footsteps walking away, car door closing. But instead, she heard nothing for 10 full seconds, and then the doorbell rang again. Christine didn't answer. The doorbell rang a third time, and then the man knocked, harder than necessary, his fist pounding against the wood. "Hey, I just need to use your bathroom. Stop being such a bitch about it," he called through the door. His voice transformed from friendly to aggressive, confirming every instinct Christine had felt. She grabbed her phone and dialed 911, told the dispatcher there was a man at her door refusing to leave, becoming aggressive when she declined his request to enter her home, and the dispatcher told her officers were en route, estimated 3 minutes. Christine moved away from the door, went to the kitchen where she had a view of her front porch through a window, and she watched as the man tried her doorknob, testing if it was locked, then walked around the side of her house toward the backyard. Her back door. Christine ran to the back of the house, confirmed that door was locked, watched through the sliding glass door as the man appeared in her backyard, trying the handle, peering through the glass, and when he saw her watching him, he had the audacity to knock on the glass and gesture for her to open it. She stayed on the phone with 911, describing everything, and the dispatcher told her to go to a safe room to put as much distance between herself and the intruder as possible. And Christine went upstairs to her bedroom, locked that door too, and waited with a baseball bat she kept in her closet, listening as the man continued trying doors and windows downstairs. Police sirens cut through the quiet suburban night exactly 4 minutes after she'd called, and through her bedroom window, Christine watched as 2 Boise police cruisers pulled up, officers jumping out with flashlights, and she saw the man in her backyard suddenly bolt, running toward the fence line, vaulting over it into the neighbor's yard, but he didn't get far. One of the officers pursuing on foot tackled him in the next yard over, and within 30 seconds he was in handcuffs face down on someone's lawn. Christine came downstairs when officers knocked and identified themselves, and she gave a complete statement about the interaction, the fake address story, the bathroom request, the aggressive behavior when she'd refused his request to enter her home. And the dispatcher told her officer's name was Dennis Crawford, and he had a history: breaking and entering, burglary, assault. And most disturbingly, there had been a sexual assault charge from 6 years earlier that had been pled down to lesser charges. He'd been released from prison 4 months ago, and was supposed to be on parole with an ankle monitor, but he'd cut it off 2 weeks prior and had been evading his parole officer. When they searched Crawford, they found lock-picking tools in his pocket, a knife clipped to his belt, and a small notebook that contained addresses of houses in the neighborhood, including Christine's, with notes about which ones appeared to have single occupants, which ones had security systems, which ones had dogs. Christine's address had a check mark next to it with the notation, "Woman alone, no visible alarm, home 6 to 8 p.m. weekdays." He'd been watching her, stalking the neighborhood, creating a target list, and the wrong address story had been his method of getting close enough to assess security and test whether she'd open the door or let him inside. And when that failed, he'd attempted to break in anyway, his aggression escalating when she'd refused to be a willing victim. Detectives canvassed the neighborhood and found 3 other women who'd had similar interactions with Crawford in the past week. He'd used different pretexts: wrong address, car broken down and needing to call for help, claiming to be from the utility company checking meters, but all of them had refused to let him inside their homes, though unlike Christine, they hadn't called police because he'd eventually left on his own and they'd written it off as weird, but not necessarily criminal. Christine realized how close she'd come to being his first successful victim since his release from prison. If she'd opened that screen door, if she'd let him use her bathroom, if she'd been polite instead of firm, he would have been inside her house with the ability to lock the door behind him and do whatever he'd been planning. The prosecutor handling Crawford's case called Christine to tell her that her 911 call and her detailed statement had been instrumental in getting him charged not just with trespassing, but with attempted burglary, violation of parole, possession of burglary tools, and stalking. And because he violated his parole, he was looking at his original sentence being reinstated, plus additional time for the new charges, likely resulting in 10 to 15 years. Christine testified at his preliminary hearing, described his behavior, his lies, the way he'd tested her boundaries and then become aggressive when she'd maintained them, and the judge denied bail, noting that Crawford represented a clear danger to the community and a flight risk. The trial concluded 7 months later with a guilty verdict, and Crawford received 13 years. And while Christine felt relief that he was off the streets, she also felt violated, knowing he'd been watching her home, cataloging her movements, planning an attack that would have succeeded if she'd been less cautious or more trusting. She installed a comprehensive security system with cameras, motion sensors, and a direct link to police dispatch, and she joined her neighborhood watch program, sharing her story at the next meeting and urging other residents to never open their doors to unexpected visitors, never let strangers inside even for seemingly innocent reasons, and always call police if someone behaves aggressively when refused entry. Several neighbors admitted they'd also been approached by Crawford using similar tactics, but hadn't thought to report it, and the group created a communication system where suspicious activity would be immediately shared via group text so everyone could be aware and vigilant. Christine's experience became a teaching moment for the entire community, highlighting how predators test boundaries, use social engineering, and exploit people's natural inclination to be helpful and polite. And she emphasizes that being rude or suspicious when someone shows up uninvited isn't paranoid, it's smart, it's necessary, and it can save your life, because legitimate visitors will understand your caution and won't become aggressive when you prioritize safety, while predators reveal themselves through anger and persistence when their manipulations fail. And that revelation, that moment when the friendly mask drops, is your cue to lock the door, call police, and trust that your refusal to comply has just prevented something terrible.